Everyone has their favorite dance move. You got the robot or the twist. We all remember the electric slide. Teach me how to Dougie. There's all kinds of dances. But tonight I think we need to formally recognize one of the wildest dance moves of the Trump era. It involves going back and forth, sometimes quickly, then slowly. It's called the Giuliani and starts with a big spinning backflip. Here is Giuliani reversing himself to say maybe there was collusion, just not by Trump personally.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
Then, part two of the Giuliani is another spinning backflip, reversing the reversal. And notice, from a dance perspective, how that puts your feet back in the position where you started. So after many headlines and hours of coverage, late today, Giuliani goes back to the broader defense of no knowledge of any collusion on the hack. So the president's lawyer went from saying basically nobody was murdered to saying, well, if somebody was murdered, my client didn't do it, a big difference, to now saying, forget all that, nobody was murdered, no collusion. Malcolm Nance has spent 35 years working in counterintel. He's the author of The Plot to Destroy Democracy, How Putin and His Spies Are Undermining America. And he knows a lot about this case, both on the national security and the legal wrangling and the TV lawyering. What do you think of the Giuliani?
It's not as good as the Dougie, but
No.
I think it's closer to the Macarena. If anybody knows the original Macarena song as it was sung in Spain, where I lived, it was two old guys singing this song about a young woman and who was being thoroughly ignored by the young woman. So this is Rudy Giuliani. He's an old guy, comes on television, he just spouts off what he wants to say. And last night I was dumbfounded when he came out and said he never ever said that anybody had any collusion, and then qualified it within the Trump campaign and then narrowed it down to in coordination with Russian hacking. So it's an amazing dance.
It's amazing, and it goes to what people try to understand, and we all spend time doing it, which is there have been deliberate strategies where sloppy Giuliani puts something out, like he did on Stormy Daniels on live TV, because they needed to get it out. But what do you think? Was this that, or was this just the flipping?
Well, you know, there are two schools of thought that have been debated all day today. Is Giuliani doing a very strategic sort of disinformation campaign himself, where he knows that something is coming down the pike and that he wants to get it out ahead of time and then qualify it to protect his client, Donald Trump? If so, that would be amazing. He's done it at least one time before, but I'm not sure. I think, as you call it, the slippery Giuliani is just a way of, you know, putting as much dirt in the air as possible,
right,
so that you have to blink your way through it.
Right. And what do you think about whether he is really in touch with the president? I mean, are we seeing just a public improvisation, or are we seeing actual client representation?
Well, you know, I certainly wouldn't. I would defer to you as to whether that was good client representation or
but
not.
I'm deferring
All
to
I
you.
know is, yeah, but in my perspective, this is a disaster. I mean, he is actually implicating people within the campaign now. Does he know that someone is about to get in trouble and he's going to throw them under the bus? Is the next thing that he's going to say is, well, the first family may have conspired or colluded with Russia, but it wasn't my client, the President of the United States? This shifting, it's not even a shifting of goalposts, right? He's in a field of goalposts, and he's going in front of each one and trying to defend them. I'm not even sure he knows what he's doing. But if he does know anything, he should know that, you know, some of the coordination that happened between Paul Manafort and his office, he had better hope that the special counsel didn't get a judge to say that they were going to waive that attorney-client privilege due to the crime fraud exception that a lawyer is participating in a criminal cover-up.
Yeah. You mentioned the goalposts. If you dance too much around the goalposts, you can get a flag for end zone celebration.
Red flag.
Red flag. Coincidentally, you can also get a red flag for terrible jokes on live television. The kind of jokes that, are they really jokes or just a waste of time? My apologies. Malcolm, always good to see you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.